We live in a world that tells us to work harder, to hustle longer, to push faster. It tells us to show up early, stay up late, and outdo the competition. And while there's nothing wrong with discipline and hard work, we've come to forget something essential, something that quietly sits at the center of it all, that no matter how hard you push, how long you work, or how big your goals are, none of it matters if you can't first understand what's happening in your own mind. The mind, your mind, is the operating system of your life. It's the command center, the filter, the lens. Everything you do, everything you feel, every decision you make is first processed in the space between your ears. And yet, we spend years learning how to fix machines, pass exams, build strategies, and chase metrics, but we're never taught how to sit still with our thoughts. We're taught what to think, but rarely how to think. We're rewarded for outcomes, not awareness. So we grow up achieving, but not aligning. We climb ladders without asking where they lead. We win races we don't even remember signing up for. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you truly examined the quality of your thoughts? Not just what you were thinking about, but how you were thinking. Was it reactionary? Was it fearful? Was it distracted? Or was it deliberate, intentional, clear? Most of us operate on autopilot. We wake up and immediately check our phones, scroll through someone else's life, take on someone else's urgency, absorb someone else's fear, and then we wonder why we're anxious, why we're unfocused, why we're tired. We've handed over the keys to our minds without realizing it. And here's the truth. If you don't control your mind, something else will. That might be fear, that might be comparison, that might be someone else's agenda, but it will be something, because the mind doesn't like to sit idle. It will fill the space with whatever is loudest. If you're not guiding it, it will wander into places you never meant to go. And when the mind is left unchecked, the same story plays on repeat. I'm not good enough, I'll never be ready, they're better than me, I always mess things up. These thoughts aren't facts, but left unexamined, they become beliefs. And beliefs shape behaviors, behaviors shape outcomes. So it's no exaggeration to say this. Your future begins with a thought. Think about it. Every great invention, every movement, every innovation in history began as a single thought. The airplane, the internet, human rights, they all started as an idea. So did every war, every act of hatred, every moment of destruction. All of it begins in the mind. This is why learning to control your mind isn't just a mental health tool. It's a leadership tool, a parenting tool, a relationship tool, life tool. Because when you understand your mind, you understand your reactions. You recognize your patterns. You start to see when you're being driven by fear or ego or insecurity, and instead of reacting, you can choose. That's the difference. That's the power. When you learn to control your mind, you don't become emotionless. You become intentional. You're no longer a victim of circumstance. You become a participant in your own life. You stop being a passenger and start driving. Imagine waking up and not immediately being pulled in 100 directions by anxiety, emails, and expectations. Imagine pausing before speaking, listening without judgment, choosing how to respond instead of spiraling into regret. That's not fantasy, that's a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned. But let's be honest, it's hard. It's hard because our minds have been trained by repetition. Decades of rushing, reacting, comparing. You don't undo that in a weekend. You don't fix it with one podcast or a single book, but you can start. You can begin today, right now, in fact, by becoming aware of one simple truth. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts. That tiny shift in perspective is where it all begins. When you realize that your thoughts are not facts, you create space. And space gives you options. You can question the fear, you can replace the comparison, you can reframe the doubt. And when you do that, you stop living on default. You start living on design. You get to decide what matters. You get to choose your values. You get to decide how you show up for your team, your family, your mission. And you do all of that not by controlling the world, but by learning to lead the one thing you can control, your own mind. Because when the mind is clear, the path is clear. And here's the beautiful irony. Once you learn to control your mind, you realize that control isn't about force. It's about awareness. It's not about domination. It's about direction. You stop trying to crush your thoughts and instead begin to guide them. You lead them like a good leader leads a team, not with fear, but with purpose. So the next time you're overwhelmed, the next time your inner critic is screaming, the next time the world feels loud, don't just power through. Pause, listen, observe. Ask yourself, who's in control right now? Me or the noise? Because every time you choose awareness over autopilot, clarity over chaos, and purpose over panic, you're learning to control your mind. And in doing so, you're not just changing your thoughts, you're changing your life. Most people think of the mind as something they have to fight. They talk about it like it's broken. I can't stop overthinking. My mind is always against me. Why do I keep sabotaging myself? And it's no surprise we live in a culture that constantly tells us to conquer, fix, or silence the mind. But what if the mind isn't the enemy at all? What if it's just misunderstood? Think about a wild horse. It's strong. It's fast, it's powerful. It has energy and instinct and the ability to carry you over great distances. But left untamed, it's also unpredictable. It can run wild, buck you off, or charge into danger without thinking. The wild horse doesn't hate you. It's not evil. It's not trying to destroy you. It's simply doing what it knows, running, reacting, surviving. Your mind is that horse. It's brilliant. It's reactive. It's deeply trained in habit, and if you try to beat it into submission, it won't cooperate. In fact, it will rebel. Because the mind doesn't respond to force, it responds to understanding. We often assume that control means suppression, that to be mentally strong we have to eliminate negative thoughts, ignore fear, and silence doubt. But that's not how strength works. Real strength is not about removing emotion or instinct, it's about channeling it. It's about knowing when to hold back and when to move forward. It's not about denying the wildness of your thoughts, but learning how to ride alongside them, guide them, and eventually direct them towards something meaningful. Here's what's important to understand. Your mind is wired for survival, not success. It's built to keep you safe, not fulfilled. So when your thoughts seem negative or fearful, they're not trying to destroy you. They're trying to protect you. They're saying, watch out, be careful, don't take that risk. That voice in your head is the same voice that once told your ancestors to run from predators or stay close to the fire. It's just doing its job, keeping you alive. But today the threats aren't wild animals or freezing nights. They're rejection, failure, vulnerability. And your mind doesn't always know the difference. So when you think about starting a business or speaking on stage or telling someone how you really feel, your mind says, danger. It pulls the reins. It throws resistance in your path. And you start to doubt yourself, not because you're weak, but because your mind is doing what it was designed to do. Now, if you don't recognize that, you'll think something is wrong with you. You'll think you're not capable. You'll start to believe the fear instead of questioning it. And slowly, without realizing it, your wild horse starts running the show, dragging you from one anxious thought to the next, one reaction to the next, one self-sabotaging behavior to the next. But the moment you recognize what's happening, everything begins to change. Because once you see your mind, not as a villain, but as a powerful creature that needs direction, you stop fighting it, and you start leading it. Leadership isn't about control through dominance, it's about connection. You can't lead someone or something you don't understand. The same is true for your mind. You have to listen to it, study it, learn how it responds to certain situations, certain environments, certain triggers. You have to notice what calms it, what energizes it, what causes it to spiral. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Because with awareness comes influence. And with influence comes the ability to choose. When you lead a wild horse, you don't break its spirit. You harness its power. You earn its trust. You work with it, not against it. And once that trust is there, the same horse that once resisted you becomes your ally, your partner, your engine. That's what learning to control your mind really means. It means developing a relationship with your thoughts. Not silencing them, but understanding them. Not fearing them, but guiding them. Not reacting to them, but responding with intention. Let's be clear, this is not easy work. This is not a motivational quote or a morning routine. This is a lifelong practice. There will be days when your mind feels loud and unmanageable. Days when fear shows up disguised as logic. Days when your thoughts race ahead of you and you forget everything you've learned. That's okay. Because control isn't about being perfect. It's about coming back. Again, and again, and again. Every time you bring yourself back to awareness, every time you notice the pattern instead of becoming it, you are strengthening the connection between you and your mind. You are building trust. And over time, that trust becomes resilience. It becomes clarity. It becomes freedom. Because when you know how to guide your mind, you are no longer at the mercy of circumstance. You don't need the world to be quiet in order to find peace. You don't need everything to go right in order to feel steady. You carry your own center with you, not because your mind is silent, but because you've learned how to ride the wildness and still move forward. Imagine what's possible when your energy is no longer wasted on internal conflict. When you stop wrestling with your own thoughts and start directing them toward what matters, that's when creativity flows. That's when leadership sharpens. That's when relationships deepen. Because you're no longer reacting from fear, you're responding from purpose. The mind will never be completely still. It's not supposed to be. Just like the wild horse was never meant to live in a cage, your mind was never meant to be shut down. It was meant to be understood, respected, and guided. That's what control really is. Not a battle, but a partnership. And once you master that partnership, once you truly learn how to lead your mind, everything else becomes possible. The fear doesn't disappear, but it no longer decides. The doubt doesn't vanish, but it no longer leads. And the wild horse, it doesn't run wild anymore. It runs with you. Powerfully, purposefully, freely. And that is when the real journey begins. There's a word we've been conditioned to fear. Discipline. It sounds harsh, cold, rigid, like something you're forced to do, not something you choose. For many, discipline brings back memories of punishment, of rules enforced, timeouts given, voices raised. So we grow up with this idea that discipline is the opposite of freedom. That freedom is doing whatever you want, whenever you want. That freedom means no structure, no rules, no boundaries. But what if the opposite is true? What if discipline is not the thing that restricts your freedom, but the very thing that creates it? When you look at the people you admire, the ones who lead with clarity, perform with excellence, and live with integrity, what you're really seeing is not luck, talent, or magic. You're seeing the quiet power of discipline, the daily choices no one sees, the inner battles they win before they even step out into the world. We often chase motivation, we wait for inspiration, we talk about willpower as if it's something you either have or don't. But discipline is something entirely different. It's not a mood. It's not a spark. It's decision made consistently, regardless of how you feel. Because here's the truth. Your mind will not always want what's good for you. It will choose comfort over growth, pleasure over progress, short-term relief over long-term fulfillment. And if you let it, it will run your life by whatever feels easiest in the moment. Discipline is what gives you the ability to pause, to interrupt the impulse, to create space between a trigger and your response. And in that space, you get to choose, not based on fear, not based on mood, but based on who you want to be. That's where freedom lives. Freedom is not found in reacting to every urge or following every craving. That's not freedom, that's slavery to impulse. True freedom is having the power to say no, to delay gratification, to hold a boundary, to honor a commitment you made to yourself even after the excitement wore off. Discipline is the muscle that allows you to do that. It doesn't mean you don't feel temptation. It means you have trained yourself to choose purpose over panic, direction over distraction, intention over instinct. And it starts small. You wake up and decide to make your bed, not because it matters to anyone else, but because it's a promise kept. You sit down to write when you don't feel creative. You go for the walk when the couch seems more inviting. You put down the phone even though the scroll is pulling you in. Those are not just actions, they are declarations, statements that say, I am in charge of me. But let's be honest, discipline doesn't feel good at first. It feels uncomfortable, boring, frustrating, because it asks you to act in alignment with your future self, not your current mood. And that means doing things your present self may not want to do for the benefit of a version of you that doesn't even exist yet. But that's what leadership is. It's the ability to hold a vision that others can't see, to protect a dream that hasn't come true yet. When you learn to control your mind through discipline, you become the leader of your own life. You start showing up not just when it's easy, but when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And the reward, it's not just the result, it's who you become in the process. Because every time you choose discipline, you reinforce a new identity. You stop being someone who breaks promises to yourself. You become someone who follows through. And with that credibility comes confidence, not the loud kind, not arrogance, but quiet confidence. The kind that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself. That you'll do what needs to be done, even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. Now, that doesn't mean you never rest. It doesn't mean pushing to exhaustion or grinding yourself into burnout. That's not discipline. That's disconnection. Real discipline includes recovery. It includes rest. It includes knowing when to pause, when to say no, and when to take care of yourself so you can continue, because this isn't about punishment. It's about purpose. Think of an elite athlete. They don't train all day every day. They have structure. They know when to push and when to pull back. The same is true for the mind. You don't need to be rigid, you need rhythm. You need awareness. You need habits that hold you up when motivation fades, because motivation will fade. Discipline is what takes over when it does. There's a beautiful paradox here. The more discipline you build, the more freedom you feel. Freedom from regret, freedom from chaos, freedom from the mental noise that comes from broken promises and half-finished efforts. You begin to feel lighter, clearer, more focused. Not because life is easier, but because your foundation is stronger. This is not about perfection. You'll slip, you'll miss a day, you'll make a choice you regret. That doesn't mean you failed, it means you're human. Discipline is not about never falling. It's about learning how to get back up quickly. How to return to alignment without shame, without drama, and without delay. It's about trusting yourself enough to keep going. Imagine the impact if more people lived this way, if more leaders practiced self-discipline instead of reactive control, if more parents led with structure and softness, if more students, artists, entrepreneurs honored the boring work that leads to greatness, the world will be more grounded, more peaceful, more productive, not from force, but from freedom. And that starts with you. Because every time you make a choice that aligns with your values, every time you act in service of your future, you are shaping not just your own life, but the lives of those around you. You become an example, a lighthouse, not because you never struggle, but because you've learned how to stay steady in the storm. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom, it is the path to it. And when you understand that, you stop waiting to feel ready. You stop negotiating with your excuses. You stop asking for perfect conditions. You show up, you do the work, you keep your promises. And in doing so, you unlock the freedom to become the person you were meant to be. Emotions are powerful. There's no denying that. They are what make us human. They connect us, move us, inspire us. They make music resonate. They make relationships meaningful. They give depth to joy and shape to sorrow. Emotions are not the problem. But the problem begins when we forget what emotions are meant to be. They are signals, not steering wheels. Too many people are letting their entire lives be driven by momentary feelings. They allow fear to tell them where not to go. They let anger slam the gas pedal. They let doubt yank the wheel. And before they know it, they've arrived somewhere they never intended to be, confused,